today, enriching relationship. We're going to talk about, are you playing together or are you escaping from each other? Everyone has this experience in marriage and in partnership, that pain that comes when one or both partners are off doing their own thing, escaping. Partnership is both about space and connection and feeding into one another in faith and confidence and love. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship, and I am your host, Rich Heller, and today we're going to talk about play versus escape, and this is a continuation of the series we've been doing on prosperous partnerships. And if you haven't listened to the last two episodes about discovering your superpower, your strengths, and re-energizing yourself and learning to be playful and creative with each other, you might want to go back and listen to those, but you don't have to have listened to those to get this episode. But I'm putting context to what we're doing here, right? What we've been building up to is, how do we have a relationship with our partner, especially if it feels like it's gotten a little stale, which is normal and natural, especially when you have children, and doubly natural if you not only have children, but you also work together. So whether you're working together or not, doesn't matter. This is true for all relationships. Things can get a little stale. You want to rediscover the play, but part of what might be contributing to the staleness is you may be using play as an escape, right? Play, like everything in life, is a double-edged sword. And I certainly have my days of Netflix binging, just like anyone else. I certainly have my days where I play games online and I should be doing something else. Maybe talking to my wife about what's on deck for the next week when we have visitors coming or whatever. We all go there. The question is, are we being unconscious about it or are we being conscious about it, right? And the big distinction here between whether play is play or whether play is escape has to do with how we go at it. A listener writes, my partner says they need time to unwind, but I feel like they're constantly checked out on their phone, watching shows, going off alone. I know we both need space, but it doesn't feel like we're really connecting anymore. It feels like they're disappearing. Rachel, I want you to know that everyone has this experience in marriage and in partnership at one time or another. You are not alone. It feels like you're alone, but I want you to know that you are part of a mass of people that is, I promise you that there are listeners right now who are sharing in that feeling. And that is what we're here to talk about. That pain that comes when one or both partners are off doing their own thing, escaping. They might be, by the way, Rachel, they may be escaping from work and overwhelmed at work, and they just don't know how to do that and include you. Right? It may not be about you. So listeners, get this. Sometimes we have things going on in our lives as individuals that we just need to back away from everything, including our marriage. And that doesn't mean there's something wrong with the other person. It means there's just that we're so freaking upside down that we can't even handle communicating our upside downness to our partner. And sometimes there's something really upside down in the relationship itself, as we will find out with Brad and Gwen today. When one or both partners are disengaging in the name of self-care, but it feels more like emotional distance or even disconnection, that hurts. That hurts, right? We want to give each other the space to take care of ourselves. We want to give each other the space to do the things that light us up, but we didn't sign up for parallel lives. That wasn't what the partnership was about. The partnership is both about space and connection and feeding into one another in faith and confidence and love. And when one person is just recharging and not engaging in the other stuff, or when both people are recharging, because inevitably if one person's doing that and it isn't brought up, the other person's going to do it too. That's when parallel lives slips in. Parallel lives where you're checking all the boxes, you're getting everything done, but you're enjoying yourselves as individuals separate from one another. You might as well be roommates. Roommates maybe with benefits, maybe not after a while, huh? The hope is that you can move back to a space where you know the difference between escape and restoration. When we restore ourselves, we can restore our partners, our partnership, our family. We can bring that energy everywhere. We can learn how to rebuild energy, not just in ourselves, but in our relationship, in our family, in our workspace, without judgment or shutdown. Well, Brad and Gwen, after reintroducing play into their lives, Brad and Gwen hit an unexpected snag. You remember I told you last episode, Brad and Gwen had planned some trips together where they were doing things they both enjoyed. Well, they got back home and Brad said, you know what? I'm really liking play. I feel like I need to reconnect with my buddies from college. We used to play this online video game together. And so I'm going to go play with them online at night, Gwen. Gwen was like, cool. That's great. I think it's awesome that you're reconnecting with your friends. But what happened was Brad was reconnecting with his friends and reconnecting with his friends and reconnecting with his friends. And Gwen's going to bed, going to bed, going to bed. They started to lose that 1 hour play window that they had created together in the last episode. And so we're sort of slipping back into playing separately, not together. Before they weren't playing at all. Now they're playing separately, not together. Gwen felt like, and was right, that Brad's fun was increasingly solo. Yeah. He was spending long evenings in the basement with his headphones on, playing video games with his pals. He would have often fallen asleep playing video games with his pals. She would wake up at 3 a.m, go down in the basement and find him asleep. And his friends had already gone to bed. They just said, oh, Brad's gone again. Because that's what happens when we slip into that kind of late night activity and we're exhausted from work. We're exhausted from life. Gwen said, I'm not trying to control what he does, but it feels like he's gone most nights, even though he's home. And Brad said, every time I try to relax, it turns into a problem. I'm trying to stay sane, not check out. It was obvious that Brad really needed this time and that something was going on with him. They weren't having a fight about this because Gwen really wanted him to have this time, but it was painful. There was a slow drift. Brad was calling this play, but Gwen was beginning to recognize what was happening. It was an escape. Well, they started to talk this out, and Brad acknowledged that he had been really stressed out about their business and that he didn't feel like he could talk to Gwen about it. He felt like there were things about the financials in the business that he had to carry the load of. And he just didn't have anyone to talk to about it. And he owned that his drive to just have some fun at night that had become more and more regular was an escape. He owned that he was avoiding getting help with really understanding the finances of his business. They were doing everything right, but they just weren't making the money they should, and he didn't know why. And he wasn't getting the help that he needed. And he didn't talk to Gwen about it, and they didn't bring someone in to help him with it because it wasn't either of their strength. And we started to talk about there's a difference between play to reset ourselves and regulate ourselves emotionally, right? Brad was overwhelmed by the finances, wasn't talking to anyone about it. He was using play to reset himself, to feel connected to his buds. But what it had turned into was withdrawal because he still wasn't addressing the problem, right? So it's okay. What Brad was doing was okay. Look, I want to be really clear. There's nothing wrong with what Brad was doing. It was the way he was doing it. The initial intention was, I need to blow off some steam. I need to connect with my friends. But it became, I'm going to avoid this problem. And I'm not going to connect with Gwen because she's going to notice I'm stressed out and ask me about it. He was avoiding the problem, and he was avoiding her because he was avoiding the problem. He went unconscious about what he was doing, and it became withdrawal instead of simply regulation. When we do things unconsciously means, by the way, that we just kind of do it without thinking about it. We don't think about the consequences of our choices. We don't think rationally, consciously about the consequences of our choices. We can slip into escape. Brad recognized that he needed to reconnect and stop avoiding. And he started to identify the difference between what play was and what escape was. Play is light. Play is generative. Play is energizing. Escape is numbing, disconnected, and closed. And Brad and Gwen gave each other permission to escape from time to time, as long as they recognized that that's what they were doing, right? The truth is that when we're overwhelmed, we can go into fighting the source of the overwhelm. We can go into running away, which is what Brad was doing in this instance. We can go into playing dead, just going to sleep. Or maybe Brad was playing dead. Maybe it was both. And there's always fawning, which when we're in overwhelmed, I'm not sure how fawning shows up there. I guess for me, fawning shows up as, I'm doing great, it's all good, it's okay. Maybe it's fawning over myself because it's myself. It's my own sense of overwhelm that I'm running away from when I'm in that space. What is it for you? I'm curious. Right? When you feel overwhelmed, where do you go? And sometimes when we're overwhelmed, we need to escape a little. But inevitably, what Brad discovered was even when he escaped a little, balls were dropped. And Gwen and Brad paid for those balls being dropped. And so he started doing it less and less. But now he would say to Gwen, I'm really overwhelmed. I'm going to go play with my buds tonight, but tomorrow I want to talk to you about this if that's okay at breakfast. And Gwen was like, yes. That's how they managed that, right? So it's escape. It can be very addictive, right? We can't always go cold turkey. Sometimes we just escape less. And sometimes we stop escaping altogether and return to play. What happened over time was Gwen actually, who didn't like video games, went and played the video game with Brad and his friends, right? Just so that she could get a taste of what it was he liked. And Gwen invited Brad into things that she loved also, just so that he could get a taste. That way they always understood each other's individual play. They learned to name their needs directly. I need to restore versus I want to disappear. They invited transparency about even when they felt a need to disappear as a form of restoration. They started talking about what was happening emotionally when one person checks out and goes offline. They created a shared rhythm of solo versus a shared rhythm of restoration and balance that out. Because sometimes we need to do things on our own. Sometimes we need to do things together. Each partner had room to refuel without shredding the connection they had with each other. So sometimes we need to do things apart so that our battery is 100%. And when our battery is 100%, then we can play together. If our battery isn't 100%, if we're seriously depleted, we can't really play. We slip into survival mode. Brad owned that as someone who was a little introverted, there were times when he needed solitude. Gwen owned that as an extrovert, she had a need for connection, and they figured out how to balance out those needs. Gwen shifted from policing to curiosity, and they both learned how to be alone without becoming disconnected. We help them to map the emotional function of each of their individual behaviors and their together behaviors. We help them to identify the difference between regulation and withdrawal, between reconnection and avoidance. We help them to identify what play actually felt like in the nervous system. And they realize that play restores, escape numbs. Play invites aliveness and experimentation and curiosity, even when you're alone. Escape avoids responsibility, intimacy, or overwhelm, but quietly builds resentment and distance. Sometimes we need to engage in play in new ways. I picked up the ukulele about a month ago. I don't know why. I just had this urge. I've never been very good with instruments, and I'm having fun with it. And I have very low expectations. I do not think I'm going to become a world-class ukulele player. Maybe that was the problem with guitar for me, is I thought I was going to be Eric Clapton or something. You can't be Eric Clapton on a ukulele, but I'm enjoying it. I have a musical side. It's fun. It's playful. My wife has zero interest in it, by the way. I don't even play around her because honestly, I'm pretty awful and she's a little tone deaf. Sometimes we need to do stuff like that. Sometimes we need to try new things together. We went as a family to Lion Country Safari, which I thought would be horrible, but we actually had fun together and some compassion together. And it brought up the whole experience together. I'm not saying it's something I want to do all the time, but we're trying new and different things. So most couples confuse play and escape because both look similar. It's the same doing, right? The doing is the same. It's the intention behind it. How we're being, how we feel when we're doing something is everything. Our emotional intent is what defines when we're being playful. Let me give you a less clear or a more sharp example. Gwen could say to Brad, "Huh, you're addicted to video games," and that could feel like a real dig. Or Gwen could say to Brad, "Wow, you are a video game addict, Brad." And it could be fun and playful. It totally depended on where she was coming emotionally. If she was feeling insecure, it could feel like a dig. If Brad was feeling insecure, it didn't really matter how she said it, it could feel like a dig. But when they're both feeling secure in their relationship and she's being loving, he could laugh. It's not the words that you say, it's how you say it and the emotional state of the person you're saying it to. These are both vital and important. Escape is a strategy for managing your nervous system. Your nervous system is your reaction to stress. When we're interacting with our partner in a reactive mode, it will tear the relationship apart. When we're interacting with our partner in an intentional, caring mode, it will build the relationship up, even if they are in reaction. So the trick here is don't try to avoid escape. Don't overengage in it. First, you want to understand it, design around it, and be intentional. Brad and Gwen became very intentional in their relational agreements around play, creativity, restoration, and even around escape. They each got intentional solo space, but committed to naming it, to being clear when they were recharging and when they were just checking out. And I'm going to say this again, sometimes checking out is what we need. That's okay. They added a ritual. Brad would say to Gwen, "I am totally overwhelmed. I need to check out. I'm going to do this for an hour. If I'm not back in an hour, would you please knock on the door? Because afterwards, I want to sit down with you and talk." He bookended his experience. Or if it was Saturday night, he'd say, "Gwen, we had a great time together. I still got a lot of energy. You're exhausted. Would you mind if I went and played video games with my pals tonight and I just caught up with them? And I might fall asleep down there and it's okay. I'm not feeling overwhelmed. I really feel a need to connect with them." And Gwen was like, "Cool. I'll talk to you about it in the morning. Tell me all about it." They could have the same experience of her coming down and finding him asleep, but she knew what was going on. And he knew why he was doing it. So it's not always what we're doing, it's how we're doing it. And Gwen started exploring her restorative spaces too. She started getting regular massage. She hired a personal trainer to help her with her hobby. She started reclaiming her own vitality. These shifts, they didn't eliminate escape, they contained it and utilized it so that their unconscious minds were no longer using escape to avoid the tougher challenges, which is where the real growth is. The tougher challenges in our individual lives and in our marriages is where the real growth is. And over time, they both felt more free and connected. When one partner escapes, the other usually feels abandoned. When both partners understand the difference between play and withdrawal and build systems that support both solo and shared energy, the connection actually deepens because guess what? You're supporting each other in your individual and marital growth. When you support each other through your marital understanding in developing individually, you are fulfilling the overarching purpose of the marriage, which is that you both feel like you're living in your strengths. You both feel like you're living purposeful lives. You both feel like you're moving towards the shared dream that you've created together, as well as your individual dreams. All of that works together in that space. You don't have to give up your solo time to be in partnership, but you do have to be honest about what you're doing and why, with yourself and with your partner. And when you do that, when you have that kind of clarity about your own emotional intention, you're exercising your love muscle, you're exercising your play muscle, that opens the door for safety, opens the door for greater trust, opens the door for greater vulnerability, opens the door for greater intimacy, and I'm talking emotional intimacy here. And when you have that going on within yourself and in your partnership, you can have wonder, You can have curiosity. You can have feeling alive together. And that's what the next episode is going to be about. Hey, if you're not sure where your relationship is right now, or you need some tools to build your relationship up, if you're not sure whether you're escaping or playing, I have some tools on our website, richinrelationship.com, in the free community. It's a no obligation community, and we do not sell to people in our community. We simply offer you resources. Go to the free community at richinrelationship.com. The website's a little clunky, I'm going to warn you. Right? We're not super smooth salespeople. What we are is just real professionals uplifting marriages. Go to our richinrelationship.com website, go to the free community, and get the free tools there to help you gauge where your relationship is, what stage of life you're at, and the communication tools that will help you to start talking about this stuff. And if you hit a wall of some kind, you also have the option of scheduling a free consultation with me where I will help you figure out next steps in your marriage, whatever they may be. So go to richinrelationship.com now. And in the meantime, have a fantastic day and an amazing tomorrow. And thank you for being a listener here at Rich in Relationship.